Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is Dr. Mahabir Narwal, Professor, Department of Commerce, Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra. In this module, the topic for discussion is first part of the attitude. First of all, outlines of this module, objectives, introduction, nature of attitude, attitude and opinions, attitude and belief, attitude and values, attitude and OB, components of attitude, functions of attitude, types of job-related attitude, changing attitude, and in the end, barriers to changing attitude. So first of all, let us discuss the objectives of attitude. The basic objective of this module are to understand the concept of attitude, to understand the nature of attitude, to look into the functions of attitude, to know the barriers of changing attitude. Now I will introduce you about the attitude. Attitude is a very important variable in human behavior because it is constituents of important psychological attribute of individuals which shape their behavior. Some examples of the attitude are: I like my work, I like my smartphone, and I don't like my supervisor. Attitudes are evaluating statements indicating one's feeling either favorably or unfavorably towards objects, events, person, or situation. These reflect how someone feels about somebody or something. It is a cognitive process, just like personality is about whole of a person, and attitude may form the personality. This may be the difference between personality and attitude. Attitudes reflect settled behavior and settled mode of thinking and of feeling. Attitudes are frequently used in describing events, people, objects, and people's behavior. Attitudes are evaluative statements. When I say I like Gita, I am expressing my attitudes towards Gita. There are few definitions of attitudes. According to Stephen P. Robbins, attitudes are evaluative statements either favorable or unfavorable concerning objects, people, or events. According to Bernard, social attitudes are individual attitudes directed towards social objects, and individuals' attitudes strongly interconditioned by collective or groups contexts. According to Alport, attitude is a mental and a neutral statement of readiness organized through experiences exerting a directive or dynamic influence upon the individual's response to all objects and situations with which it is related. According to Joseph Reitz, the word attitude describes a persistent tendency to feel and behave in a particular way towards some object. So all these definitions describes that attitude is not a statement, but it is the evaluation of the statement either favorably or unfavorably or positive or negative. Now features, or we can say the nature of attitude. Some important features of attitudes are: attitude affects efficiency. A person's efficiency is affected by attitude. A greater amount of efficiency displayed by the employee with positive attitude rather than the employees with the negative attitude. That's why study of attitude has an important place in an organization. Attitude is not inborn. Attitude is acquired or learned. Attitude is not inborn. For example, if the colleagues of Ram is a religious person, it will affect Ram's mental makeup also. Soon, some kind of religiosity will be seen in Ram's attitude. Attitude has many sources. As we know that attitude is not inborn, but it is learned or acquired. Attitude is acquired or obtained from many sources like communication media, society, personal experience, etc. Attitude is universal. Attitude exists in everybody, like only in a particular person. It has the quality of universal. Attitude is related with needs. Attitude fulfills some important need of an individual. It is related with need of a person. For example, a positive attitude of an individual job fulfills the need of satisfaction of that individual. Attitude is different from values. Values get reflected in our general behavior because values are our ideals. On the other side, attitude is related to some particular event or situation. Values are different from attitudes. Values can always be seen in an individual's behavior, like being honest is a value. On the contrary, if an individual has a negative attitude towards someone, it doesn't mean that he has a negative attitude towards all the other person. Attitude is always changing. It is not compulsory that the attitude of a person which he displays now will remain the same. It is always changing. The attitude of a person changes with a change in his feeling or belief. Attitude may be positive or negative. A person can have positive or negative attitude both. For example, if an employee telling others that his manager is a very good person happens to be an example of positive attitude. On the other hand, saying that policies of the companies are not according to the interest of the employees is an example of his negative attitude. Attitude tends to result in a certain type of behavior, and individual behavior is the outcome of his or her attitude. Attitude is a tendency to react. It reflects an individual tendency towards a person, an object, thought, or place. For example, if an individual would find joy in worship and the activities which are related with it, that individual has a religious attitude. Now let us have a discussion of attitude and opinion. According to Thurston, opinions are expressions of attitudes. Attitude and opinion are closely related to each other. To evaluate an object or sometimes in a definite way, attitude is a predisposition or tendency. On the other hand, if we talk about opinion, it is when an individual is more concentrated on particular aspects of concepts or target. But these terms are not the same. There is difference between opinion and attitude. Now let us have relationship between attitude or beliefs. Though closely related with each other, a difference can be made between attitude and belief. Belief is related to attitude and it reflects the way in which a thing is defined. It is identified by the belief that what one supposed to be true. Belief is the assumptions about that object. When someone shows his trust in some person or thing, he has belief in that thing or person. Attitude and values. Values are global beliefs that guide actions and judgment across a variety of situations. Attitude of an individual may be defined through his values. Nature of an individual can be defined through his values. This can be decided through his ideas about what is right and what is wrong, what will be good and what will be bad. If an individual honest to his work, then he or she may be considered good because the values plays an important role in his or her life. Attitude and organizational behavior. To bring desirable change in human values, personality, and attitudes are the big challenge before the management. In changing behavior of an employee, organization play an important role. Behavior is the outcome of situation of an individual and nature of the individual. Basis of the behavior are attitude, perception, and defensive mechanism. Attitude of the employees affect the behavior, job involvement, job satisfaction in the organization. That's why the attitude of the employees is most important. Employee behavior is affected by attitude. If attitude doesn't lead to any specific action, a direct relationship is not agreeable between attitude and action. For example, a supervisor who doesn't like certain people in the organization, but the supervisor treats them pleasantly and fairly in the organization because he doesn't want his attitude to interfere with his professional judgment. He may treat them good in organization, but if he meets some at social place or in a party, he may ignore them. Components of attitude. There are three components of an attitude: cognitive or informational component. An individual has beliefs, ideas, and values about an object. The information is correct or not, it makes no difference. For example, Ram is person, wants a job, and he may get to know about the firm from newspaper or from other people that the firm pays good salary, but in reality it may be correct or may not be. Emotional or affective component. Components of emotions include the feelings of a person, positive affect, neutral affect, or negative affect. Components related to emotion involves the person's feelings of like and dislike towards the attitude object, person, event, or situation. This component explains his emotions. I like teaching profession as it gives a feeling that I'm doing some contribution towards society. Behavioral component. One can see only one's behavioral components out of three components of attitude. The behavioral component of an attitude consists the behavior of an individual in a particular manner towards an object. For example, in above case, the concerned person may join teaching profession due to his emotional components, leading to one's behavioral component. One can't see another person's beliefs and his feelings. These above components show that an attitude can be considered as a way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. For example, if an individual has positive thoughts about his boss at the job, that individuals would develop feelings of respect and consideration for his boss. As a result, may like to associate more frequently with him. Now, ABC model. ABC model contains three alphabets which stand for affective components, stands for A, behavioral for B, and for cognitive component there is C. Here, attitude is expressed by these three components and known as ABC model. This method is very important because through this model, an individual can understand full knowledge about the concept of attitude. Functions of attitude. An understanding of attitude is also important because attitude helps people adapt to their work environment. Attitude can help in predicting human behavior at work. Attitude performs some functions like attitudes organize facts. Different people with divergent attitudes tend to perceive things differently. Interpretation of facts and deviations of meaning for the words thoughts and feelings basically depend on the way they are organized. So attitudes influence perception. Attitudes select facts. Attitudes are like a filter screen. Certain kinds of things can pass through it, whereas others are rejected by it. Attitudes also facilitate the selection of facts. From a mass of objective information, an individual tends to select such facts as are favorable and consistent with his attitude. Attitudes determine meaning. Favorable attitude enable the individual to find good meaning, whereas unfavorable attitude is linked with bad meaning to environmental objects and situations. Attitude determines meaning of what is seen in the environment. Attitudes reconcile contradictions. With the proper attitude as a background, intelligent people can reconcile or rationalize the same actions to which others have contradictions. It is not uncommon to come across people who hold contradictory opinions. For example, when a worker takes a little rest, a supervisor considers is lofting or idling. Similarly, the worker may often think that supervisor or foreman is spying or evaluating depending upon the former's attitude towards the management is general. The adjustment functions. When employees are treated well in the organization, they are likely to develop a positive attitude towards supervision and the organization. Otherwise, they are likely to develop a negative attitude towards the management and the organization. Attitudes often help people adjust to their work environment. For example, if the employees who are well treated are asked about management or the organization, they are likely to say good things. These employees are very loyal to the management also. The ego defensive function. Along with the adjustment functions, attitudes also help them to defend their self-images. People often form and maintain certain attitudes to protect their own self-images. For example, workers may feel threatened in the employment by advancement of minority or female workers in their organization. Ego defensive attitude is formed and used to cope with the feeling of guilt or threat. Unless this feeling is removed, this kind of attitude will remain unchanged. The value expressive function. An individual can express his or her values if he or she carry the attitude of value expressive. Self-esteem, self-concept are related with value expressive attitudes. If there is centralization of authority in an organization, then the attitude of an employee will be positive towards flexible work schedules and decentralization of authority, etc. A manager who believes strongly in work ethics will tend to voice attitudes towards work practices as a means of reflecting this value or specific individuals. The knowledge function. Attitudes helps and allow people to organize and explain the world around them. Attitude leads to people to understand by what is going on around them and what is in the mind of people, how they may behave in future. Attitude is often substituted for knowledge. In the absence of knowledge, we use our attitude to organize and make sense out of the perceived object or person. A good example is the stereotyping. We may use our stereotype attitude towards an individual to whom we don't know and judge him or her. Types of job-related attitude. A person may possess numerous attitudes, but organizational behavior focuses on job-related attitudes only. And job-related attitude is the attitude which an individual has towards work environment or towards organization. The attitude may be of different type like positive or negative, unfavorable or favorable. Overall, there are three types of job related attitude. One, job involvement. Second, job satisfaction. Third, organizational commitment. First, job involvement. Job involvement refers to the degree with which a person identifies psychological with the job, his emotional, professional and social attachment with the job. Different authors have given different meaning to this term and there is not complete agreement over what the term means. Fewer absences and less resignation rates are the reason of high degree of job involvement. Even the accidents are less when there is high job involvement. Second, job satisfaction. General feelings or attitude of a person towards his work or job is refers to job satisfaction. An individual will carry a positive attitude towards the job if that individual is satisfied with his job, and the individual will carry a negative attitude if he is not satisfied with his job. Job satisfaction is related with the dimensions of the job, pay, the work itself, promotion, co-workers, supervision and opportunities. Job satisfaction has received bulk of attention in organizational behavior. When people speak of employee attitude, more often they mean job satisfaction. In fact, the two terms attitude and job satisfaction are frequently used interchangeably. Third, organizational commitment. The last job attitude is organizational commitment that affects the organizational behavior. It is that one as one's identification with the organization feels proud of being of its employee. Sometimes an employee may not be committed to the organization and its objectives that may be involved or attached to his job. When an employee has organizational commitment, the turnover and absenteeism are low. An employee may not be dissatisfied with the organization as a whole, but sometimes he may be dissatisfied with his job. But if the dissatisfaction spreads to the organization as a whole, he is most likely to consider resigning from the job. Changing attitudes. The attitude of an employee can be changed. It is not always fixed. For example, if the employees of an organization is not satisfied, he will have negative attitude towards the firm or organization. He may feel that the top management is not looking towards his problems. So, the management would change this attitude as the management know that happy workforce is the power of the organization. But sometimes because of certain barriers, the management is not allowed to change its attitude. Types of change. Congruent change. It means that the change is a movement in the same direction, but the intensity of feeling is reduced. For example, if an individual dislikes his manager very much, this negative attitude may persist, but the degree of dislike will be reduced. Incongruent change. Incongruent change involves change of direction itself from negative to positive or vice versa towards the person. For example, if in the above example, that individual starts liking his manager, this is change from negative to positive attitude. Barriers to changing attitude. Some important barriers are prior commitment. This barrier occurs when people feel a commitment to a particular course of action and are unwilling to change. And to change the attitude would be to admit the mistake. For example, if the CEO of a company is an MBA from IIM, Ahmedabad, and the CEO himself appoints a financial manager who is also from the same institute, Ultimately, the things are not working out well, and the finance manager is not very good. However, as the president has himself hired the manager, he is unwilling to admit the mistake. Using the ego defensive function of attitude, the CEO distorts all negative information received about the finance manager. Low credibility. Employees are least interested in responding to change. The efforts made by someone who is not liked has low rate of credibility and is not convincing. The term credibility implies trust, expertise, and objectivity. Strong commitment. If an employee is strongly committed, it becomes difficult to change his or her attitude. In other words, we can say that stronger the belief about the attitude, the harder it is to change it. Insufficient information. Many times people don't see any reason as to why they should change their attitudes. The manager may not like the negative attitude of the subordinate, but the subordinate may be quite pleased with his own behavior till the manager shows him that his negative attitude will hinder his career progress and his salary increases. He will continue to have the negative feelings. Degree of fear. People often ignore it when there is a low level of fear, as the warning or an degree of fear. People often ignore it when there is a low level of fear, as the warning are not strong enough to warrant attention. Similarly, if a very high degree of fear is used, people again reject the message and refuse to be persuaded, as the warnings are too threatening and thus not believable. A person's efficiency is affected by attitude. Attitudes are frequently used in describing events, people, objects, and people's behavior. Attitude is acquired or learned. Attitude is not inborn. Attitude exists in everybody, not only in a particular person. A person can have positive or negative attitude. Attitudes are one's personal experiences. If an individual has negative attitude towards someone, it doesn't mean that he has a negative attitude towards all the other person. To bring desirable change in human values, personality and attitudes are the big challenge before the management. In the end of this module, now points to ponder. Attitude is not inborn. Attitude exists in every person, not in a particular person. Some particular needs are fulfilled by attitude. An individual can have positive or negative attitude. Attitudes affect the employee's behavior. Thank you.